don't let your ego stop you from, as Jeanine said in the last podcast, having a client in who might spend a little bit less the first time because you want to protect this higher average order because you're afraid of what your peers will think. If you only had a client in who spent $1,000, imagine.
Hey, and welcome back to the Difference Maker Revolution podcast. And we have Jeanine McLeod all the way from Tampa, Florida, who you all know. We've got Ronan Ryle, the Facebook marketing expert that he is. And then we have myself, Ronan Ryle, who doesn't know a lot, but we will have a good conversation about the growth seesaw. The seesaw that is average order value and number of clients. And we're also going to talk to you about the importance of LTV. So what is LTV? It's not a type of car. It's lifetime value of a client, often overlooked by many, many businesses. And we'll deep dive into that too. So Jeanine, we see a lot in the industry about this confusion about average order value, right? Which is what our clients spend with us on average. And how you balance that with the number of clients you serve. And that if you truly want to grow your business, how you have to have a business strategy around that. Because, Jeanine, we've seen people fail with this. You know, we have seen people who have this vision that they want an average order value of $10,000. And they spend 6, 7, 8 months of their year trying to get one sale of $10,000, right? We have seen people who've come to us saying, I'm in trouble here, can you help me? And that has been their belief, right? So can we just talk a little bit about the balance in a business, about balancing this sort of idea of average order value with number of clients served?
Yeah, I think it's a great conversation to have, Ronan, because I don't think people think about this. I think they think about their average order value, and that's all they think about. And they don't think about that balance of how many clients can you get in at a specific average. And that's how you run a sustainable business. And you have to figure out what that price, what that is.
Yeah, and then have a strategy around that, right? So we're not saying for one thing, right, that it's not possible to have a successful business that's built around what might be perceived as a much higher average order value, right? But what we have to say is that wherever you decide, you have to have a strategy around it, right? So, you know, if I go to a Michelin star restaurant, right, they're going to serve less clients, right? But they're going to get a higher average order value from each person who attends their restaurant, right? As distinct from if I go to McDonald's, I don't expect to pay Michelin star prices, but they're going to have way more clients than the Michelin star restaurant has. But there are two strategies that those businesses have worked out. And often I think that in the photography industry in particular, it's nearly like those who think they are a Michelin star restaurant, right, and have a high average order value, that they look down on anyone else, you know, who may be a McDonald's or a Four Guy or whatever other restaurant that might be in that chain, right? And often they overlook the fact that even a Michelin star restaurant needs a certain volume of clients to have a successful business, right? So it's something. I don't know what drives it, Jeanine. Maybe you know, because you know, like
ego, Ronan. It's ego.
It's ego. I agree with Jonathan. I think it's two things. I think it's ego. I think people want to say what their average order value is, and they want to say a high number, and they feel if they can't say a high number, that people in the industry will look down on them, right? Two things. One, I think that people lie about their average order value all the time, because they want to sound more impressive to their peers. But that's a topic for a different day. But I do think it's ego, and I think it's also a little bit laziness, you know, because I've heard, and lazy might not be the right word. I'm not sure what the right word is, but because we've heard members say they only want to photograph one session a week. And so it has to be $8,000 in order for them to reach their goal for the month. There again, it would be the same thing. Like if you want to use your restaurant scale, God, could you imagine being a restaurant and only having one person to make a meal for a week? There's a lot. Like that's great. If that's honestly all you have time for, maybe this is a hobby. Maybe this is part-time. Maybe this isn't your one and only business. Then that's fine if that's the lifestyle you're going for. But then I'll use Gary Vee's thing here. Don't complain. Right? If that's what you want, if you just want one client a week and you think, but don't complain then when your business isn't repeatable, when your business isn't profitable, when you can't get clients to book you. Don't complain. Don't complain. And so when people do complain, then obviously they're not happy with their results. And there are many reasons why that's just not sustainable. And so this is the seesaw. And as a business owner, you have to find the balance. Your prices go up, you have less clients. Your prices go down, you have more clients. And you gotta figure out where to get that seesaw level for you. It's gonna be different for everyone. My business is different than photographer X, photographer Y, photographer Z. And everybody has different overhead. Everybody has different costs. Everybody has a different family situation. We all have different things, and so we all have to find that right balance. But you can't let your ego get in the way, and you can't have your not willingness to work get in the way either. It's work.
That's huge. Like there's a book by a guy called Ryan Holiday called Ego is the Enemy. And ego is the enemy of so many photographers. It's like in the industry, it's like driven by this egocentricness of, it starts with the image competitions and the print competitions. And it almost feels like the more merits and the more badges and the more awards I have, it's great because I'm competing and beating my peers and my peers will respect me and, they'll see me as being amazing and successful. And the industry is driven and fueled by this. And the average order value or average, some people say my average sale is whatever. And they think that a higher average means that they're more successful. Higher average order values are a result of two things if you're not a difference maker: pricing and confidence. You don't have a higher average sale or higher average order because you are better. You have a higher average order because your pricing is set up to allow you to achieve that. And two, you have the confidence to ask for the money. That's why. And don't let your ego stop you from, as Jeanine said in the last podcast, having a client in who might spend a little bit less the first time because you want to protect this higher average order because you're afraid of what your peers will think. If you only had a client in who spent $1,000, imagine.
We see that all the time, Jonathan, this protection of my average order value mindset. And I think many who adopt this don't even realize they're adopting it. But as coaches and mentors and business people, we see it, right? And it's amazing that there's this fear of, I have to protect my average order value, not that, well, I've done all my business calculation on being a Michelin star restaurant and this person really only has the budget of McDonald's, right? After I've had a conversation with them. So I've redirected them to McDonald's, right? It's really, really, really fascinating, this fear of, I'm not going to do anything that affects my average order value because I need to be able to tell all my peers about my average order value. And it's interesting. And it's interesting to me that often the most successful businesses I see in our industry have the lowest average order value in our industry, which is often the volume photographers. They actually deliver, not everyone, but the vast majority of them deliver a bottom line that is multiples of any photographer who's told me that their average order value is 10,000 plus.
Can you just
multiples.
explain what bottom line is, just in case?
So the actual profit that they make. And I'm not talking, some people misconfuse what profit is in our industry too. They talk about profit being, I had a sale of 10,000 and I spent 3,000 with my lab and my frame provider. So I have a profit of 7,000. That is not profit. Your profit is what's left after you've paid all of your expenses. And it's what the business generates that's left over. That's what I mean by profit. And, to have a successful business, you have to make a profit, right? Because at some stage, something will happen where, for whatever reason, often outside your control, you stop making a profit for a period. And the profit that you put aside, right, provides you the cash to deal with that when it happens. And it happens every business, right? So that's what profit is. So I wanted to talk about lifetime value because I think when people understand this, right, and they understand the principle of lifetime value, that it will bring a further understanding to why high average order values on their own is not enough. And I think it's important to that we're not beating up high average order values, right? Because the bigger difference you make, once your pricing aperture is open, as John has said, people will spend more with you, right? Once you don't get it in the way of them spending that money. So we're not beating up on that. What we're beating up on is this mindset of, I have to have a high average order value because it's based on your ego and how you want to boast to your fellow photographers, right? And they think you're great because of that. That's really what we want to deal with. So lifetime value. And Jeanine, this is a concept like that you've always understood because you're a business person, right? And you've always understood the importance of lifetime value, and your strategy is built around lifetime value. But lifetime value is, in broad terms, is that what is a client worth to you across their lifetime, right? So it's not a once-off sale. It's that client coming back to you over and over and over and over and over again. So therefore, what are they worth in the lifetime of your relationship with them? And we don't hear this being talked about in our industry, right?
No, we don't. And we should. It should be a much more common conversation.
So just tell us about lifetime value. And do you know what I think would be a really good story to tell, Jeanine? That client you had in the last week.
Yes, I will tell that story too. What do you want me to start with? Do you want me to start with that, or do you want me to start with...
I think let's talk with the story, because I think it epitomizes for me, right, how the lifetime value of a photography business owner can change once you understand LTV.
Yeah.
All
right. So we had, I'll be right up front with you on our average, because it'll come out with when I do my numbers for you later, right? When we start talking numbers, because it's easier for you to use my numbers than for me to use my numbers than made up numbers, right? So our average order for first birthday sessions is $1,500. It's right. I mean, legit, no matter what I do, it's right at $1,500, maybe $1,550 sometimes, but let's just do $1,500 for easy math, right? And that is pre-tax, right? I don't count tax in my average order because it's not my money. So my average order pre-tax is $1,500. And so keeping that in mind, because that'll come into play with this story, and it's going to come into play when we talk about average lifetime value of a client. So we had a potential client who came from a Facebook ad 2 weeks ago now. And when they called and Betsy did the discovery light call with her, she was very clear with Betsy on the phone. I'm not spending anything more than your minimum package. She's like, I don't want anybody to try and sell me more. I only want what I want, and that is what I'm coming in for. I want beautiful portraits, but I don't need a lot of them, right? And she was very blunt. And Betsy's like, okay, well, we can get you in on Friday at 10 a.m., and we booked her, right? Now, here's a couple of things that I'll note. We weren't doing anything else. She called on a Tuesday. We didn't have another session booked on Friday at 10 a.m. So what were we all going to be doing? I would be working on marketing. Elizabeth would be organizing. Betsy, we weren't going to be shooting a client anyway. So why not bring her in? It keeps everybody working. It's another thing that we can put up on social. Like there's so many reasons to always be photographing. So let's put that out there, right? But regardless, we weren't going to be shooting. So book her in. So Betsy books her in. They come in. We all knew what Betsy had said because we didn't want to try and sell her something, right? But I had a meeting with the team right off. I'm like, we're going to give her the same amazing experience that we give everyone, regardless of the fact that she was very upfront saying she's only spending the minimum. So we did. We gave her an amazing experience. It was a shortened one because she was actually very respectful of the fact that she didn't want to buy more. So she wasn't asking for lots of extra things, right? So once she saw we had enough in an outfit, she's like, okay, let's move to the next one, And once the baby had eaten enough cake, she's like, okay, we're done with cake. I don't want her to eat too much, And so we were able to get her experience in and done in like 45 minutes for the photography, which is fantastic for a birthday session. Anyways, we bring her into the immediate instant design consultation right afterwards. And I told her, I'm like, Betsy told me what you're interested in, but we're still going to take you through the full, process here. We're not trying to sell you anything extra, right? But I want you to see your complete slideshow. We're going to go through and we're going to choose your favorites, and then we'll get to where you want to go. So in that process, her husband was like, but baby, I love the album, right? And so she's like, no, I said we're only getting the minimum this time. But I love this. And this is where it happened, right? She's like, but I love it here. Everyone is here is so nice. I love these photographs. I love them all. We're coming back for a family portrait later on this year. And that's when we'll get the album, hun. And he's like, all right, and so they were kind of talking. She actually ended up buying a little bit more than the minimum because they talked themselves into it. We didn't talk them into it. But she's going to come back. She's already booked it. She's coming back at the end of the summer. They're going to do a family session. And I know they're going to get the album then. They've already talked themselves into it. They fell in love with the process. They fell in love. And I did not even tell you this part, Ronan. She had been burned before. Remember how I said I had this sense in my head that she had a bad experience in the past, and that's why she wanted to come in, and she was like very upfront. She had been burned by her newborn photographer. And so she was very skeptical of photographers in general at this point because of the experience she had with her newborn photographer. And so we kind of, I guess in a way, passed her test. And we delivered an amazing experience. We didn't try to oversell her. We didn't try and bait and switch anything with her. And they're coming back. And I can, like this, she is my ideal client. She is my ideal client. We have a very high Hispanic population. In fact, most of my team all speak Spanish besides me, who can say hola and cerveza and baños. And so she's Hispanic. She has a big family. She loves her family. She's very family centric. The dad is involved. And my ideal client avatar, the dad loves his family just as much as the mom and is heavily involved. So everything about them screams ideal client avatar. They'll be back. I know this. They will reach my lifetime value of a client. I just have that sense. And after doing this for so long, my gut is usually right. And so anyways, that to be said, I think a lot of our listeners, a lot of our members would not have booked her. And they would have missed out on loving on this amazing family and creating beautiful portraits for them and having a client that will be, and I didn't even say this, within 2 hours of her leaving the studio, she left a 5-star Google review. You can go read it if you can read Spanish because she left it in Spanish. But Google Translate is fantastic for that. So anyways, this sometimes people need to come in for an experience.
And Jeanine, there's a business strategy principle called continuity, right? And continuity is that you don't have to. It's the opposite of having to find all of your business or new clients all the time. Right?
Correct.
Which is really, 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 really difficult to do.
And exhausting.
Right? And exhausting. And, when you have a business that is built totally around continuity or has a large proportion, like you do, Jeanine, about business coming from continuity, people have to understand lifetime value, LTV, to connect those two dots. So just talk to us a little bit more, Jeanine, about your strategy with lifetime value and, your client lifetime value with you and how you've designed your experiences for your clients so that the LTV is where it is.
Yeah. Looking at this, I tried to find entry points into our system, into our studio, right? At what point in a family's journey would they naturally want to come in? Originally, that was newborn. I don't do newborn anymore. not the sense of newborns is the way a lot of people do. Steve has kind of gotten me intrigued in the idea of doing newborn like a family session. But originally in the studio when I was much younger and I could handle the strains of a newborn session, that was our entry point. Now it's first birthdays. And I'm very happy with first birthdays being the entry point into the studio. And then, so what we have designed is we've identified the different key milestones for children and for families. And that's the timeline that we market to. So we do milestone birthdays, right? So once they come in at 1, we nurture them between 1 and 2 to get them to come back for their 2-year session, which is definitely a lot more difficult than the 1-year session, but we lean into it. And it's our too cute to handle session. And so we play into the fact we know they're little tornadoes, and that's what we're going to be capturing at 2. But this is the beauty of children, right? And as a mom and as a dad, Ronan, you know this, every stage of your child is unique. And every stage is worth celebrating, even if it's the craziest stage and they don't sit still at 2 years old. It's still worth having those moments captured. So that way the families can remember, Jonathan, do you remember when you wouldn't sit still? I do. You drove your mother and I crazy. But then at 3, they're so sweet, you know? And so anyway, so we've designed so that way parents will want to come back at least every year for their birthday. But then we've also added in seasonal highlights as well. So obviously the main one being Christmas, and that was the first one we added in. So we wanted everybody to come in originally for their birthday and for Christmas. And that was the 2 points. Then I was like, well, we've kind of maxed out our holiday season. How else can we get people to come in the spring, right? And create a second version of Christmas, but in the spring. And that's when we came up with our baby ducks. And we've been doing baby ducks now for 17 years. Gosh, it's crazy. As Aaron, I can remember this all because it all started when Aaron was a certain age. And so I can time it to that. So now my lifetime value of a client is based upon the fact that for at least 6 years, they will come in for a birthday, for ducks, and for Christmas. Now we have some unicorns. Well, they'll bring their kids in for ducks until high school graduation. And I love those clients. And it's really quite amusing. And same thing for Christmas. But let's be honest, most people, once their kids hit elementary school age, aren't quite as enamored by their children anymore and don't come in as often. They usually still come in at least at Christmas, but they don't really necessarily hit birthdays anymore or ducks anymore. And so I have that all averaged into what I expect a client to spend over their lifetime. And also hope that they have more children because then the cycle all starts again. But then we do the 10-year, right? So once they turn 10 and they've hit double digits. And then if they're Hispanic, it's the quinceañera at 15. Or for the Americans, we do a 16. And then for high school graduation, they do their high school seniors. And then in between there, every few years, they do family. So you can start to see, Ronan, how this all adds up. And it all adds up from someone coming in for a cost of booking for a first birthday session. Jonathan, what am I hovering at right now? Like $50 for a cost per booking, right? So $50 to book somebody in for a first birthday session. When all told, the lifetime value of that client is probably between $50,000 to $60,000. This is why when my cost per booking goes up to 55 one month or maybe 75, I don't panic because okay, so it was 75 this month as opposed to 50. Still, in their lifetime, they're going to spend $60,000 here. Right? And that comes from our average is $1,500 from the majority of our sessions. Our seasonal sessions are less. They're right at $800. But they're shorter sessions, right? They're 20-minute sessions. So when you factor in, and then when they do their high school seniors, our high school senior average is higher. Our high school senior average is $2,500. And like our family, so like we have different averages for the different types of sessions, but we add that all up and we consistently have our clients in this. And now that we're at that, the past 2 years now, I've been photographing the high school seniors for the babies that I photographed. I'm really feeling old when I say this out loud, but it is quite crazy, right? When you start thinking about it. And so we actually have this isn't just guesstimates. These are actual numbers of clients of mine that have been with me for the past 18 years and come back every year. And I got to tell you, I love that. So it's funny because at Christmas now, we're mostly at only repeat clients. I don't market to cold traffic our Christmas sessions because all the sessions are booked with our existing clients. And you know what? I'm a Christmas person, so I know this is off topic, but it's a warm, fuzzy feeling when for 6 weeks out of the year, it's all of your existing clients coming in for another experience. You know the kids, they know you know the parents, you're catching up from the past year, all that kind of stuff. So if you're my why is going through life with my clients, right? That's my why. That's my favorite time of year because I get to see all my clients and love on them all again. And it's very rare if we have a new client coming in at that time. So anyway, and then let's talk, and that's just them, Ronan. If you factor in their referrals, the number's higher.
Yeah. And I love Jeanine, because I discovered this the hard way. I discovered it from probably the most difficult mentor I ever had, who happened to be my dad. And when I started in the print business, and I always wanted, the big glossy color brochure job, from a client, and then there'd be somebody ring up looking for a business card. And I'd be going, oh, really? Business card? I'm going to have to spend all my time for this business card? And I was saying this to my dad one day, and he says, come here to me. He says, son, and he called me Ronan that time because we were at work. He wouldn't address me as his son at that stage. Ronan, today's business card is tomorrow's color brochure. And you telling me this story about this woman for her first birthday and having a budget just brought that back to me. That piece of advice I got.
That's great.
Oh my gosh. I hate to say 33 years ago, right? And just the similarity of it. It just goes, wow, And then the other thing, when you were talking about LTV and the clients, you being their photographer through their whole life, and now you're getting on to the next generation of when they were babies, and it's starting to repeat itself. Reminded me of an experience I had, because at one stage, as I said, we were in the lithographic print business, and it was hard because we, even in the brochures, right? How often do people get a brochure printed, right?
Right.
So, and the funny thing about it was that every brochure was different, and every client who had a brochure wanted something that was different. And it was complex. And, when everybody wants something different, guess what? That's when things can go wrong, right? But then when we were in the packaging business, and the packaging business with the same client coming back all the time for the same packaging. So this month they need 100,000 units of packaging. And guess what? Next month they need another 100,000 units of exactly the same packaging. Right? That because we knew them so well, because we were used to them, right? And used to their needs and delivering for them, that it's so much of an easier business, the continuity business. And that's what you've just described with your lifetime value strategy of the same client being in for first birthdays, 2-year-old, baby ducks, probably wizards in between, 10, sweet 16 or quinceanera. I don't know how to pronounce that right. Apologies to all you Spanish who are listening. And high school senior. Like, it's the same thing, is that they already know, like, and trust you. You have a relationship and you're working with them. It's the same as that packaging client for us, who's coming back over and over and over again. So just love that. And it's so much like to create a business that has that philosophy and that strategy. I promise you, it'll be so much more rewarding, as you can see with Jeanine talking about, having clients for life and being their photographer of choice all through their life. But it also, the bottom line that we talked about earlier, the net profit, is so much easier to create. So much easier to create. So I really, really, really enjoyed this conversation, this podcast.
I know, me too. It's one of my passions.
I think we need to create a movement and redefine success and not make it about average order or average sale and make it about the bottom line.
The bottom line. We could just keep reminding people that McDonald's is the highest restaurant sales in the world, and their meals cost $5.
I'd rather be in McDonald's any day of the week.
I know, right? But yes, I agree. Because, not to keep harping on it, but I really don't think my clients would come 2 or 3 times a year for 18 years straight if they were worried that we were going to oversell them every time they came in, and try and sell them $8,000 to $10,000 worth of product every time they came in.
There's no, I don't think, Jeanine, I can tell you they wouldn't.
They wouldn't.
And if they are, they're an exception.
Right.
And there's not many of them.
There's not many of them, but not enough to sustain a business, right?
Correct.
Not enough to sustain a business.
Correct.
And I will be very clear, as so people don't dismiss what I'm saying. And look, I'm being a photographer now too, worried about what other photographers might think. You do have to have your pricing structure there so people can spend the money, right? And so when someone comes in for a family portrait session and they're buying the larger collection on the wall, the pricing is there, so they will spend the higher average, right? But you have to have it there, but it can't be what you're shoving down people's throats every session.
Yeah. And as we know, as difference maker photographers, the biggest difference you make to your clients, the more they will spend it anyway, happily. Yep. It's the wanting to spend.
Right.
Because they see the value rather than it being shoved down their throats, right? That you have to spend. That's the key difference, and often misunderstood in our industry. And I'm sure it happens in other industries too.
Oh, I'm sure.
Well, we've experienced it, right? But you've got to put the client first, deliver for the client, regardless of what they've told you up front. Just deliver an amazing experience. And when you do that, the lifetime value of that client will outweigh any other concern you have.
On that note, to discover how to do this, all you need to do is click the link below and join the inner circle, because we will help you to create a very successful business. That's it for this podcast. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone.
We'll see you on the next one. And don't forget the business card story.